Hello, hello. How is everyone? So I went away again, and therefore didn't stream alts like I thought I was going to last week, maybe even the week before now. So yeah, today I'm going to have a look at alts. I can see my stream is a little bit catchy, so hopefully someone can come online and tell me if it's okay or not. I think I closed everything. Hard to check now when I'm online already. Yeah, I think I closed all the things I normally close, but let's see how we go. There's one thing I can close. Okay, right. So I thought I'd start on the dollar. So crypto has been very much. Hi, Ravi. You're welcome to join my group, and then you can learn my strategy. It's quite hard to explain unless you follow me. So it's always quite hard to do these streams and know whether anybody who watches is a beginner or follows me and knows what I'm talking about. So I have to assume most people know what I'm talking about already. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions if you want. So what I was going to say, crypto is mostly following TradFi at the moment, but unfortunately significantly more weakly. So what we are typically seeing is when the dollar rises, Bitcoin drops. When the dollar drops, Bitcoin rises, and similarly for indices. So indices, SP and Nasdaq have been going up significantly. The Dow's a bit weaker. Russell's also gone up a lot, and on the lower time frames, Bitcoin does follow. I don't use any indicators, Ravi. I just use all the drawings on the charts are what I've drawn. Unfortunately, I have yet to find something that can draw things for me. That would be nice at some stage if AI can draw all this for me, and then I can just retire. But no, I draw everything myself, and I don't typically use any indicators. Occasionally I throw them on there just to have some extra viewpoint, mostly on the very high time frames or the very low time frames, but not really for anything in the middle, because I find supply and demand are much more accurate. Most of my strategy is supply and demand. So S&P has obviously went up significantly, and I think Bitcoin bounced around the same time. I'll check that in a minute, end of March, but obviously didn't go up significantly. But I think, again, the low time frames it's generally following, but with vastly less magnitude. So, for example, today we've had a drop on S&P, and we've had a drop on Bitcoin, and we had a pump yesterday. But obviously S&P is at all-time high, whereas Bitcoin is not. And obviously structures are very different anyway. We did have S&P. So S&P, I think, had it made a monthly supply? Some of the indices had made monthly supply. S&P hadn't, but it had made weekly supply. So I was looking at the potential for shorts as we came back through this area, but obviously it just kept going. It had come off a significant demand at the lows, and obviously we were looking at those demands as we came down through a bit of chop. As I say, Bitcoin is predominantly following this and following the dollar. And similarly with altcoins, they are very choppy, similar to what we see on the dollar, not for quite as long. This is some middle of lots, almost a year of data here, but we've had almost a year now of the dollar being in this sort of large sideways range. And I was looking for the possibility of shorts as we came up into the 3-month level up here. Didn't both hits, actually this hit and this hit didn't quite hit my alert, although my preferred area would have been the yearly level. And then obviously this is a yearly supply, so it can go significantly higher inside if it wants, but I had that alerted just for the original, let's see what happens. And I did think, when we came up this second time, that it would break that time. It had taken stops from the lows, but all it did was take stops off these highs and then come back down again. So again, now we've had this week a decent bounce on this. So again, just needs to see where it goes, and it's got weekly supply in there. So a lot of what we see on crypto is similar, like things are just in corrective patterns and running in triangles, or like crypto much lower time frames, but not dissimilar to this, like very sideways ranges with triangles forming and then breaking, but very weakly, or with channels forming and breaking, but also very weakly and in both directions. So let's go on to Bitcoin. Just wanted that as a bit of background. Go to the high time frame. So I did a whole stream 2 weeks ago on high time frame Bitcoin, so I won't look too much at the high time frame now, and I won't. So if you want to know what I'm thinking on the high time frame, the macro, then go back to that. The too long don't read version is obviously made a high here. We came down, we broke a monthly demand, but this was a week away. It was a 3 monthly demand. Maybe I should look at the 3 month chart. Yeah. So we broke a 3 month demand. It was a weak 3 month demand because it hadn't closed significantly above the red candle there. So it's not surprising it's come back through. It also hadn't tested this 3 month below. So this was a preferred long to this area. However, obviously it's come quite deeply and now we're waiting. And what it did then is that when it broke down, it then closed below this green section, so thus creating a 3 month supply. So now we're between, maybe this is actually a 6 month, no, it's not a 6 month demand. We've got a yearly zone. I put my drawings back, it's a bit messy with all the drawings, sorry about that, but we've got a yearly zone, go on the log chart as well, down here at 47k. We typically don't test the yearly, so it's quite interesting to see if we are going to test the yearly this time. Like previous years, always slightly front run the yearly, maybe not only one time. So typically we tend to front run a little bit what we ideally want, but this would be front running significantly if we get up here. Also because we've now got institutional adoption, it's very possible and we're already seeing quite different movement to what we've had previously. And I've had two concerns about that. Like, so if you look back to 2016, 2018 bull run, 2017 bull run, it's very strong. If you look at 2020, it's strong, but not as strong as the previous. Now, if you look at this bull run, it's what I would consider significantly weaker. Now, it's still impulsive because it's still holding waves that don't come back and don't retrace into the range of the previous wave. However, obviously now up here it's got weaker and weaker at the top and it's rolled over. That doesn't mean, obviously it has to come down below 15k to actually break the macro structure, so it's got a long way to go. And, arguably it's broken structure here, but because I don't consider this a significant breakout, I'm not necessarily considering that I'm considering this as the more significant area, particularly because it's aligned with the previous all-time high. Now, the problem is this, should we see this as weakness, given the strength here versus the strength in the previous run? Or is it just because we've got institutional adoption and it takes, more money to move it, prices are higher, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm unsure. But yeah, just from the TA perspective, we came down into this 3 month demand. We came deeper. I had an alert on the top and an alert on the monthly inside. We came deeper than we expected, but now we've created this 3 month supply. And what we've now had this week, or last week, in fact, is that 3 month level tested. And that was, what I talked about in my last video, that we look at zones of interest to get short or to look for the possibility of reversals. This was zone of interest for a long, high time frame, so it's taken its sweet time and can still go deeper in the zone. And then above, we had lots of zones that were left untested. And again, this is an issue with alts as well, that there are so many zones untested above that it's been quite hard to know. Just move my drawings along. It's been quite hard to know which zone. There are zones that are considered higher probability and zones that are considered lower probability, and generally just sort this out. So we want to, if we were looking to short this, if we were confident this was going to go down, we're looking for a retracement. Oops. I'll do that. We're looking for a retracement. Is my mouse not working? Okay. We're looking for this is the drop, and we're looking for a retracement into a premium area to look for a short. And that means retracing 50% or more of this drop. So we're looking for that short entry. So ideally, we would like to take a short up here. However, it doesn't have to get all the way up here. On the lower time frames, we have like there, you can see it's extremely small retracement before a much bigger drop. So it's trying to judge. if this is not finished, this is as an immediate bottom, but we're still overall short biased, then we could look for a lower high from here, so somewhere in this area for the next drop. Then we'll have 3-4 waves, and then maybe we get the bigger up move. So there's lots of different factors to consider. So thus I just alert, zones that I'm looking at the possibility of shorting. So we've got here, what we had in this immediate was this 3-month level. So it's not an ideal level for me. It was or is at the 61 fib, I believe. It's just below the 61 linear fib there, but at the 61 log fib. So it's not ideal, but this is an area that we would start to look for short entries. We've had a reaction off that area. Take that off. But we're now come down. Now we've got a weekly demand in here, which we're just testing today. So it is entirely possible at this stage, while we've got some local PA that may have given some shorts, but it's entirely possible that we pick up support here in this zone and go for another leg. And you can see the level of chop and the difficulties we've had in the last couple of weeks on this. It does, each time it goes up, it does give a retracement, but then it makes a new high. So it is rejecting off these lower time frame zones that I'm looking at, that I've been looking at shorts. This is still the higher time frame chart mine, so there are other entries I've had, but these are the areas I've been looking at for shorts. The provisional one was the early shorts off the local supply here. And obviously then we looked at the CME gap, the possibility of taking stops there. So both of those got little reactions, but neither of them were able to break structure on the lower time frame. So as you can see, each of these waves, pull back, retrace, pull back, retrace, pull back, retrace. None of them are making a lower low each time. And now we've had this final move, and the lower low is still below 75k there. So we're still just consolidating through here. So we could still very easily make another move up, and we still have a weekly demand here. So in order to be more bearish at this point, what I want to see for this week, no, what am I just doing? Let's move the third. Disaster. Maybe I didn't. I don't know, I felt like I moved something there. I want to see a weekly close to flip this demand to supply. That mouse is not wanting to work very well. So I want to see a weekly close below 78,520. So if this closes a big red candle, then I will look for shorts off this as a new weekly supply here. But at the moment we're still very much in limbo. I thought yesterday we might make a 2-day supply, but then price recovered and we didn't. Yeah, now as I say, we've come down again, but we're still holding this immediate range. On the lower time frame, so I was away, as I said, again last week, so I haven't really tried to, and I haven't shared this lower time frame chart on the stream. I don't think I shared it last time as well. So obviously I'm looking at lower time frame shorts through here as well. I haven't really looked for longs because, as I say, it's been hard unless you've been watching this on very low time frames. You would have. It's been harder for me to make calls. So I have had, an alert here for 2-day demand in this new 2 weekly, and then I had this alert down here for a while, which just didn't get hit when we had this retracement here. I was hoping we'd come back and take out those 2 lows, but we didn't. Just light a cigarette. I see my camera's gone very dark. I'm supposed to have a spotlight on, but I guess that's failed. Let me see if I can re-spotlight myself. You know what? That's with the spam. Just come back, sort of. Anyway, yeah. Don't know if anybody really needs to see me, but people seem to like it. So, okay, so yeah. The long side has been harder. Actually, well, it's been harder for me because I haven't been online as much. But from the perspective of, looking for longs, like here, we didn't test the 2-day demand. Here, we didn't test the daily, didn't take out those lows. Here, did come back into a reasonable area for longs. But again, it was a bit choppy here. And once we'd taken the stops off there, then it was hard to know if we were going to come down and take all the stops below. But again, my issue with this is that chop on the way up. This is just quite nasty, if you ask me. I don't think it's strong PA. And I think there's a lot of manipulation going on. So, we got some better longs down the actual lows. So now coming up here, it's just been easier on the short side, even if they're not going significantly far. We've had there's been nice and much cleaner supply than there has been demand. What else? I mean, that's pretty much it for Bitcoin because, as you know, so basically the bigger picture is we've just hit 3 months supply, so we're now looking for short bias. I'm seeing the spotlight's disappeared again. Maybe I should just turn the spotlight off and let the camera just do its thing on its own. Maybe that would be better. Oh, there we go. I just changed the background picture by mistake. Maybe it just doesn't like the background. I don't want to have the black background because I'm wearing black top. God of the trials and tribulations of streaming. Anyway, who cares? If I go dark, I go dark. So be it. So the other thing I always look at is confluence, and the confluence has just been a bit off. So while we've hit 3 months supply on the US dollar pair, the Korea pair is still kind of not really like okay. Arguably, not even at that wick yet. You know, we're in a sort of a supply area here or a previous resistance type area, but the 3 month level is a little bit higher on this, so that's an argument for potentially this taking another little run up before it drops. Similarly, I had reservations on US dollar tether dominance, so this is still holding a 4-hour demand down here. But one of the other things I noted on the USDC dominance chart, this is holding a 2-hour, is that it hasn't tested. So the US dollar tether dominance, this daily is significantly higher. It's like up here. So it already tested that daily, but the US dollar, I don't know what C stands for, USDC dominance, it's still kind of floating a long way above this. Now, I followed USDC for a while, but I still find the tether one more reliable. But again, I just like confluence across a lot of things to give me confidence. So again, this created weekly supply. Obviously, it can pound up through these stops on this anytime at once. And again, this reflects my reservations on altcoins because altcoins look like this, except in the other direction. Altcoins are going up. Yes, we've got some big pumps on some things, but a lot of them are just chopping their way up, or particularly the higher volume ones. So the lower volume ones are the ones that are moving. You'll see that in a minute in the market cap charts. But yeah, I worry now that we are setting ourselves up for an epic stop hunt. But again, I'm just looking for signs on the lower time frames that that's actually going to happen. Excuse me. Stablecoin, I think, also hit the daily. So yeah, with that daily, so the daily here, as you can see, is higher, and we've essentially gone through it, or kind of borderline through it on the tether dominance chart. On USDC, it's significantly lower. On the stablecoin dominance chart, we're at it now. And on this old sort of aggregated one, it's a bit dated now, we're also at it. So again, it's mostly aligned, but not brilliantly aligned. And the lack of alignment is difficult because a couple are on support. Tether looks like it might be just sort of borderline breaking, and USDC has broken and potentially has lower to go. So again, the confluence isn't quite there for me to make a really good judgment on this. We've also made weekly supply, and it's just come up and testing that today. And I think that's the same for all of them. Can delete some of these old lines now. I just wanted to, I think I haven't shared this for quite a while. So again, that one, what's the word? Prediction back in November or October. I think I made that, worked out quite well for the pump into here. And actually, the other thing on these is the tops. That's the other sort of difficulty. So US dollar tether dominance has come up into 3 months supply here. USDC, again, is not really at a significant level. So again, like these, if I trusted tether, I'd be like, okay, yeah, biased for crypto to go up and US dollar dominance to drop. But yeah, we need to trust the tether chart more than the USDC chart. I probably need to think this through some more. But yeah, so I can see, so lower time frames, basically the short version is lower time frame. I can see this potentially coming down lower, either into here or potentially into the weekly even. But I can also see that this isn't necessarily the top further on the USDC. On USDT, it's more inclined to be the top, but it also could go and still take out the highs here. Again, could dip deeper if it wants. So again, so the lower timeframes aren't badly lined up. You know, come off the weekly supply and drop lower, and that gives Bitcoin a bit more up before a more significant retracement. Anyway, I hope that's clear, because it's quite hard to explain, and when I'm explaining the confluence of all the different charts, it becomes a little more awkward. But yeah, all up on Bitcoin, I guess what we're saying is highest time frame, we're on 3 monthly demand, and we're kind of waiting for that to develop further. It hasn't really looked particularly strong off the zone so far. It's still looking worryingly retracement-like. And if you watch my high time frame video, I made some comparisons to back in 2023, and I still feel like we could be in this type of structure. Or this, I think, or even, you know, smaller version down here. A lot of people think we're here and potentially have made a bottom. That's possible. Of course, it's possible. Anything's possible. But there are similarities here that make me think that this isn't necessarily done as a correction yet. And then, so we're on 3 months demand. We're worryingly, we've made 3 months supply, but it could go higher inside it. A lot of chop below is quite corrective and difficult to trade, quite honestly. So again, like, I want to do this video more on altcoins because they are more interesting. But I'm just covering this off. Ether basically not dissimilar to Bitcoin, but significantly weaker. So the correction hasn't got past 4 hour supply, the most immediate supply, and this was kind of the zone I wanted to hold, this monthly zone on the way down. It went straight through it, and now it's rejecting off the same level. So generally, I really don't like the Ether chart very much. And on top of that, Ether BTC is currently looking like it wants to break down and has a long way to fall if it's going to get to support. Now, Ether BTC can be a little bit awkward and doesn't hold supply and demand as well as US dollar pairs. So mainly just to watch this. But yeah, Ether for me at this stage is not something that you should buy. Like if you're looking to long that of one of the two, then you long BTC, you don't long Ether. And if you're looking to short, you short Ether, not BTC. That's going to be the higher probability for each direction. If this is just a deviation below the support here, and it comes back up inside here and reclaims this area, then maybe we can start looking for longs again on this. But at the moment, and while it remains below this daily supply, new daily supply in there, then I'm looking for rejection to come lower. Suddenly got a frog in my throat for some reason. Again, I won't go massively. I think I went over the higher time frame in the last video, so there's not really much to say on this. Zones below, I've gone off the log again. Let's go back on the log scale again. So possibility of a bounce at the start of this last up move, but for Ether for a long time I've been thinking that we're going to go lower in here, and I still think there's a significant chance it just takes out this entire range based on the fact it's swing failed all-time high. Then it really should take out 893, which is not great for Ether. It might take a while to do that, so don't necessarily bank on that happening overnight, but that's kind of what I'm looking for as the higher probability on this. I'd love to be wrong, but that's, yeah, unfortunately what I'm thinking. So, like I said, this video is supposed to be about alts, and I've already talked for 20 minutes about things that aren't alts. So let's move on to alts. Check the time so I can put that in the timestamp, so it's around 25 minutes. So moving on to alts. Basically, my bias I put in the chat yesterday is down based on others. So again, not sure how many of these I've shared. But this is nicely indicative of how alts are looking at the moment and sort of the indecision. So what we have here, this made 3 month supply a little bit higher, up here, excuse me, up there. It's got weekly, 2 weekly, 3 weekly supply in here that it's rejecting now. It's on support still here, but it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on how many of these you count, it's hit multiple times. So this has not been, this area was a zone I said don't look for shorts, and I did have a lot of long alts hit at this point in time. But for me, this is a fairly nice looking head and shoulders now. And I always wanted lower, and similar to the Ether BTC chart, or no, sorry, the Ether chart, you know, we've had a correction, we've had a retracement that then failed to take out all-time high. So we either get a zigzag correction now, an ABC wave. So we've had AB, and now we're just messing around sideways. Or we could get a triangle correction, so maybe we bounce in there, and that's why I've got that potential triangle line drawn. Then maybe we can get bullish. So the triangle, actually, no, so I did draw a more positive triangle. Maybe this is the bottom, and this is the bottom of the triangle, what we're at already. Possibly. Possible it goes up from here. So like I say, still on support, but now it's come up into supply, and a level I had marked for quite a long time. Mess off the chart. So as of yesterday, I was saying don't be looking for longs on alts anymore, because even, you know, this is, you know, you don't look for longs in supply. So, you know, if you want to look for longs again, it's here, but then we have the risk of these trend line stops being taken out. So that's my concern. Now we do have a weekly demand in here, sure, got a 2 weekly underneath it, which looks like it was already tested. So there's a lot of demand on the lower time frames, but this is, from my perspective, is just a retracement of that last drop, and then we'd be looking for a next drop from there now on the lower time frame. So I need to see what the reaction is as we come back into these weeklies, and on the majors I've alerted some of these, yeah, that's pretty much it on this. Like, if you follow me for any period of time, you'll know what my overall bias on this. You know, even from up here, I was looking for drops from down there. You know, I can show previous predictions. So I had the head and shoulders drawn in since I think around here, middle of last year or something. I was saying I wanted this head and shoulders retracement up to here, and then the bigger drop. So that was an analysis I did a long time ago. Various things. So yeah, Q3 2025, you know, it was a little bit early. We had a few, so this was difficult. We had a few last pushes before we got up there. Time frame bull and bear scenarios. That's from up there. There was if there's always different scenarios. If we're going up, similar here, you know, we were looking for this as to be a corrective move. Went a little bit higher than planned, but eventually we got the correction, the drop from there. Yeah, I sort of predicted that a number of times. That's most of this is the most recent one. Should have gone to the bottom of the list first. But yeah, it was looking for rejection up here. This was the optimistic, and then we had, you can see the circle in there, that was potentially reject there. If we were optimistic, maybe we could retrace all the way up there before the further drop. So, and again, then the more pessimistic end of this line is if we drop all the way down. So those have been the predictions that have played out quite nicely so far. And now the indecision is simply that we've landed again on this support, and whether it's going to act as support again for another bigger up move or not. So this was the first area I was looking at for rejections, and I was seeing the reaction there. As I said, let me just check the 3 month. The 3 month was actually in fact tested already, so that's interesting. I think this again reflects the difficulty with some alts, that if we do, so I can see there's a clean weekly up here, so potentially that would be another area to look, obviously, if it gets up there, and obviously the highs, 2 week up the top. But this is similar to the issue I've had with a lot of the alts as well. Mouse is deciding to die. I think this is going to be the moment where my mouse dies and I need to get new batteries. Obviously. One moment, please. The bigger problem is that then I can't put new batteries in this thing because, we're back. Because I need to pause the video, so let's hope we lost. Maybe I should pause it and look for new batteries before it actually decides to die. I don't know, let's just finish alt anyway. Yeah, so the difficulty is we have this chop through here. So in some cases we are getting rejections, like cleaner rejections like you see here on others. In other cases, some of the alts are just running through these areas, and that's been the difficulty, that it's hard to judge on an alt. So my alerts have been going. The reliability is reasonable. Like I say, the ones that run through tend to be running through relatively quickly, and they're quite clean. They're just holding demand and keeping going. So what I was saying in the group a couple of days ago is that, if you see like I've been alerting a lot of 8 and 12 hour supplies if they are made. So, and they have been a lot more reliable. I think 80 to 90% of those are working. Occasionally they break, but again, most of the ones that break are ones that have come down into demand before going back to test them. Or they're, the 8 and 12 hours of working. I'll show some examples in a bit. And then it's just dropping down into demand, and maybe the demand holds, but at least the original short entry has given some a lower time frame trade, even if it's not given a drop to zero. But yeah, I can show some examples in a minute. But yeah, so the 8 and 12 hour, what you're looking at is any all coming up into a major supply. Set your own alerts, or if you get my alerts, great. And then watch for 8 and 12 hour supply to be made, and then you're getting a fairly reliable short of those. On the long side, yeah, we're getting these pumps, some of this size, some are significantly bigger. But for me, at least, and maybe this is because I haven't been across the charts as much because I've been on holiday, I haven't really been able to pick what's going when, I'm looking at the charts, they're not necessarily like, some of them are hitting major demands, and then you can have a reason for it, but others, it's a lot of the new stuff. And I guess if I go to total E100, you can see, so if we compare this and the strength of that little up move we've had here to total E100, so total E100 has come, so it's come through all this local supply. Go back to others. Maybe it just dropped more first. Yeah, I think it dropped more first. So like total E100. So firstly, total E100. This is the total excluding the top 100. So it's much more of the shit coins. But it dropped into annual demand. So that was the circle at the bottom that we were looking at. But again, has come now up into a 3-week supply. But this is a bigger, more significant move. And we see that on alts. Obviously, it's the smaller alts that are doing the bigger moves, because most of the majors haven't really gone anywhere so far. So again, hit supply here, previously marked area to look for a rejection. And now we just need to see if it holds demand. This I had an alert, if it does come deeper inside this annual zone. Again, if you recall that this they gave, when they released this new ticker, they did have all the history on it, which I drew, and then they decided to delete all the history for some unknown reason, and refused to put it back. But I still have my drawings on the chart, so I still at least know this is annual demand. So you'll see, for some of the new tickers, you'll see I have random drawings with no price. But yeah, so anyway, I do know this hit annual demand, so there is possible that this moves up from here. But as I say, others it's difficult when you compare that to others, because obviously others can drop significantly lower. So I think totally 100 is down equivalent to here. And then total DeFi had weakened as well. So again, compared to others, this is also significantly weaker, hasn't made it up to the 3-week supply, made a lower 3-month. So you can see this big brown zone. So it's come up inside that, tapped it a couple of times, I think, since the 3-month was confirmed, and is now dropping down, and is dropping through. So it had made, so the weekly had also made a weekly demand, but is dropping quite deeply inside that and could well flip it. So if it closes beneath that dashed line, it could flip that to a weekly supply if we have another few days of bearishness. So this is obviously looking a lot more like a bear flag. And similar to others, like, I want this down on that demand at least, but actually, in fact, these are such high time frames, it's very hard to judge, because, we could come down to here and stay, another 5 years in here before we get that drop. Or that's very bearish, but we'll bounce significantly and do much more in here before this. But like, if I was looking at a lower time frame chart on this, and if I was looking at anything that wasn't market cap, I'd be saying, okay, we've had these up moves, and this is a distribution, this is lower high. We're going to get that ABC wave down into here, or even down into here. I mean, it is crypto, but that's down from 78 billion in DeFi down to 2 billion. So, I don't necessarily think that's realistic from a crypto perspective, unless crypto was to die entirely. And even down in here, 16 is what, 80% drop or something from where we are now. But structurally, from TA perspective, these are things that I would potentially are very likely. So it's going to be very interesting over the next 5 to 10 minutes how this plays out, if you have the patience to be in the space for all that time. And so anyway, what else? Either way, on all of these, just keep an eye on your charts and just watch these weekly demands as they hit and see if they hold. Dominance, so obviously Bitcoin dominance has run up again. It did make a 3-month supply, but it ran up inside it. It was a weak one. And then now also has made a monthly demand. And again, I don't like really dominance very much from a TA perspective, but so it's slightly missed. It bounced, just held this weekly in here. It didn't quite get to where I kind of wanted it to at the low. And then again, just looking for what happens if we get a retracement into there. Ether dominance is basically the same as, or is slightly more bullish looking than Ether BTC, but basically is the same as Ether BTC, so I won't go into that too much. Again, it had a move up, didn't get anywhere significant, so this obviously isn't really being very helpful. It's not reaching supply in areas I'd look to short, and it's not holding demand either. But again, I would look for longs more preferably when this comes down into this area. Others dominance. So others dominance and total E100 dominance, obviously we see what we see on the market caps. So others dominance is very much sideways. We haven't had much money flowing into here. We had a good week last week, and then now it's retracing. Again, hasn't quite got to kind of where I wanted it to, but still very much in a sideways / slightly down trend for the last year. But again, this is not really saying something about me wanting to look for longs on this right now. There's nothing, and it's choppy, it's hard. Again, is it going to fall off a cliff and come all the way down here? Seems like a very big drop and money flowing dramatically out of alts. I think if that was to happen, that would probably be due to a BTC pump rather than crypto just dying. And then comparing that to Total E100, again, you can see that up move that we've had recently on Total E100 is stronger. It's broken the trend line. But again, hadn't hit our meme support down here from the price action, which was deleted. And now is up in monthly supply. So again, after the move like this, I want to see back down in here. So we want that market cap to be back down on weekly demand. I want to see this dominance back down on this 5-day area. Hopefully not all the way down there. But again, those are the two areas that we'd be looking for possibility of longs. But these are low probability LP because we're now coming out of monthly supply. So if we show, I can show you one of the monthly charts. So monthly supply in here, it has been hit once already and made a lower low. It's now taken out the high, but it's a swing failure. So it's not that bad, but we need to see those demands hold and there's not just be a large swing failure into monthly supply there. So I'm seeing this 5-day, 4-day, 3-day hold here, or this weekly hold kind of nearer the bottom. And then we'll see. Just delete that up. Yeah, and it's interesting, like again, this others dominance also is it's in 3-month supply. Yeah, so I mean, when I look at all of this and I guess we just can't be overall bullish on this. Like it's one thing to be bullish on lower timeframes, it's one thing to be bullish on individual alts, but all up what we're saying and what we've seen for most of the year. Well, this is most of the year and last year. So we've had a bit of up this year, a bit of strength coming in this year, but barely. And really just this sort of sideways / down for the better part of 2 years. And being very perilously close to reaching to have this long-term support that we've had here. And I don't know, like I say, it's a market cap chart. So to treat it like at the price of any typical altcoin and demand at a particular level, and maybe that's not a fair comparison, but as we see, we'll see what plays out here. But for now, I'm locally bearish at these highs. see the reaction on these new demands that have been formed, being conscious that a lot of things have significant trend lines that could get taken out on big wicks, being also conscious that trend is down, multiple hits on support, zones below untested. So yeah, around here, see what you think about looking for longs on alts, but bias should basically be down for the moment, and then just be very careful while we're coming through here, because this could just see another giant wick, a giant candle like we saw back here. So a little fly buzzing around my face. Anyway, so that's pretty much my views on alts at the moment. I haven't really got anybody watching the stream today to ask me any questions and to tell me what you think, or if you have any specific requests. So I'll quickly look at the majors. So again, I did look at the majors in the last stream. Interestingly, of all the majors, BNB and BCH were the only two which had hit like a major demand that I might be more interested in looking at longs. And those two are the only two that then made monthly supply at the end of last month. So we'll look at BCH first. So this had hit, it was an annual zone, it had hit already. And a 3 month, I think it had a new 3 month. So it hit with the big wick, it hit again here, and I was looking for longs, and I tried to look for longs again, got a little bit of a move up. But most of the majors I've really just been looking at up, down, up, down. Spread this out so you can see. But yeah, a lot of the majors are looking like this. They're sideways, like BCH is to the bearish side. Some of them are more to the bullish side and a bit more up here, and mostly just really a sideways range and bounded by this daily supply that most of them have above. Maybe there's some slight differences, but a lot of them are looking quite like this. So BCH made this monthly supply, so I was like looking at being bias short. Did give a short off the level, but then only just made a slight lower low before coming up and swing fading. So I've left that monthly in, but it did swing fairly before the bigger drop. I then threw in another possible short on 2-day supply there. This is the kind of supply that might flip, but again, like so, BCH, as I've talked about before, has all these stops down here. So while it had this major zone, I still wasn't convinced it couldn't throw a wick through all of this, and it has zones down the bottom that weren't tested. So hence why it's always good to trade both directions, even if you take the scalps off them, and it's up to you whether you want to hold or not, and look for the bigger moves. It's probably going to make another daily. I've preempted, drawn that daily in there today. Obviously has a big 4-day, I think, in there. 4-day, and probably going to make a 5-day today. But anyway, you can look for shorts if it comes up into this area, daily and 2-day supply up there. With this bar being conscious, we are on major demand down here. I also looked at all the BTC pairs on these, and none of them look particularly great either. So again, that kind of supported me being generally short biased on pretty much all of them, TRX being the one exception. So TRX here, this was just kind of annoying, really. Like, I was quite biased along down here, as you can see, trying to get in again slightly too early, but then eventually got the up move. Then got shorts off the top up here, but then didn't hold a higher low and came back down and took out those lows. And then I think it just didn't. I think I had this alert for a while, but it just didn't come back and test, and it just ground up since then. Again, a couple more aggressive shorts, which I thought were worth watching in case it took out these highs. And also because of the left trend line stops, but again, it's just kept grinding. And similarly here, got a nice short down in here, but had made a new, what's that, 2-weekly demand in there. So again, has another decent move. And I think I was toying over putting a long entry on here, but I think it might have hit this short at the same time that Bitcoin made one of its highs. So again, it made me slightly wary of looking for longs at that time, and therefore missed that last pump up there, which is kind of annoying. So yeah, we can look first, see if it does give a lower high here, or if it does actually eventually want to go up to this 4 hour at the top, or even make a higher high. And again, this is kind of a bit of a front runner. Like, I really would have liked it down on this 3-month demand down here before this run up. Anyway, TRX, I really don't like the structure. It's not something that I find easy to understand. It doesn't really, it's a bit like looking at a BTC pair. It doesn't really seem to conform to other cryptos. So I think I'll leave that one alone there. But yeah, I set an alert here on weekly demand, you know, if it does come back into there. But again, we've got all those trend line stops below. Might give a scalp off here though, or even another up move. But you can see if that aligns with anything Bitcoin does. Litecoin, I think, again, is just more on the weaker side and a little bit, maybe a little bit more like Ether, again, just holding under this daily supply that I've talked about. I did put an alert here for this new weekly demand, which got a nice little scalp bounce yesterday, but has now, called the day before yesterday, but has now come back down as of today. But again, you know, if you're confident these things are going to be long entries, that's, you can keep an eye on that and see if it holds this weekly here. Similar to others, same with those trend line stops below, making me nervous. I never had, you know, this is in a big 2-month demand, but again, not dissimilar to others. It's hit so many times that wasn't confident having long entries in here. So again, I was looking for this to be taken out 3-day there and all back into this annual level lower. Like I really wanted, you know, when I did high time frame analysis previously on Litecoin, I really wanted to be, you know, macro bullish on this. You know, it has had a really nice move up. It came back and tested annual demand, came back and swing failed that high. So that kind of means we think we should take out these lows before that up move. But it's, you know, it's hard to say, is this a giant distribution pattern? But also, you know, this is something you really want to trade. So since June 2022, so what's that, 4 years, it's just been in this sideways range. So it could be great for, you know, sort of mid-time frame scalping. But, you know, if we're going to say this is, I think I saw somebody, I did high time frame analysis because I saw somebody draw a triangle on this and say it was going to do a ripple and go to the moon like this. And yeah, it might do. I mean, God, it's now since almost a 10-year consolidation here. So if it does want to go up, it could have a very significant move up. You know, of 10-year consolidation, you know, we could see that going, you know, something like that. But if you want to hold it for another 50 years until you die when it's going to happen, that's the problem. So yeah, anyway, I've pretty much left Litecoin alone to the long side, even though I do want to be macro long bias on it. I need to see some strength coming into this. And also I think the BTC pair is just hideous. On that quickly. Yeah, most of the BTC pairs on these are just like going down to the slope of doom. For some decades. So yeah, since 2014, or arguably since 2018, this has just been in a downtrend. So yeah, sure, it might suddenly do a giant green candle, but again, trying to time that is not necessarily the easiest thing. Every time it does do a pump, it just gets into supply and comes right back down again. So that's Litecoin. Again, low time frame. You look for longs on that if you want. And then just don't get your stops anywhere in this trend line such that you get slipping. Like you'll get probably quite big slippage on this if you do have a stop anywhere on that trend line and it does drop. And then finally in this layout we've got Ripple. So again, had a nice pump on the daily yesterday, but then came right back down. Did make a 2-day demand, I think, by a hair. Yeah. And again, a little bit hard one to judge, so I haven't really done much on this. It had a two weekly supply. It was also because it's come up into this weekly supply, but also had made a weekly demand, which is why I've got blue on top of blue. So again, if you want to trade this weekly demand with your stop underneath the weekly, feel free. For me, it's just sort of indecisive. Again, we had a triangle here. We had the triangle breakout. We get on the lower time frame. We had a triangle here. We had a triangle breakout, and then it just came right back down again. And then it's just kind of ended up in a sideways range. So I was a little more short biased when we had this weekly supply. Did give a couple of nice shorts, but again, didn't manage to break demand. Still has trend line stops below. So yeah, Ripple, again, we got the long down here, but that really hasn't gone very far, so I can't imagine anybody's held it for any period of time. My preference on Ripple is that we get down into this yearly area. And Ripple does tend to do what I expect eventually. So if you want to spread some bids on the higher time frame down here, then that's a possibility. And again, because I haven't shown my fun high time frame analysis for a while on this, if you follow me, you'll know. So Ripple likes to do these triangles, goes up, distributes, and then comes back down and runs straight through the triangle. And it's got loads of these throughout the chart. And you know, this is the one we predicted here, which has really played out pretty nicely. But then I did kind of joke maybe this is a giant triangle, and then we're going to end up like this. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But you know, do be very careful about just sort of listening to people who are just super bullish on this. Now, from a supply demand perspective, this is an annual demand. So, you know, looking in this area, either on the top there or deeper inside, those are kind of areas I would look for long entries. But yeah, just be very careful in the bigger picture of holding on to this if it doesn't do what you think it's going to do, because that pattern, you know, it could just be a breakout again. It's taken out the all-time high on a swing fail, could come and take out, you know, the low that created that high, one of these lows, or even just this consolidation. Now it's done that, it could come and take stops from here, maybe back into this monthly, 2-monthly demand down there. Looks like it wasn't quite tested. So be conscious that that could happen on Ripple. As I say, lower time frame, we're hitting that weekly demand. If you want to look for longs on this in the hope that even if we get up and move up into the $2 area, then that's fine, carry on. And just be conscious of what Bitcoin's doing. How are we going for time? 50 minutes. I did that one quite quickly. So yeah, I'll try and get through the rest of the majors and then maybe look at some other altcoins if I can. Just check the group and see if anybody said anything. No, a couple of people have acknowledged that I said I'm going to stream, but not come to say hi. So yeah, as I said, BNB is similar to BCH, but BNB is came down and hit, well actually, so I had the alerts for 6-month demand here. It's come down deeper inside. They were circled because they were the ones I considered more important than these previous ones we had, because I can hide all this stuff now. I'm probably going over this. Then I was looking for quite a more aggressive long entries, but again, we had this sort of secondary drop, taking out the low again before moving. And in that period, it's then made a monthly supply. So that's made me similar to BCH, much more indecisive. I put an alert for 12-hour supply here and then taking out the monthly just in case it runs and does the same as BCH. So again, but I have also got an alert on this for weekly there and 3-day down here, which was there previously and didn't get tested. This is not looking quite as bad as BCH, has less incentive to go down, I think. You know, it's on a more major zone. I think BCH is, you know, it's more choppy and BCH hasn't actually made a higher high. So while it has a yearly demand, it's not a strong one, whereas BNB did make a significant higher high here. So this is a stronger demand and therefore more likely to be biased long. I think I put a comment on this alert saying, yeah, 1 week demand, but let's hope this is not an SFP of monthly supply, because if it is, then we expect it to take out the low. But yeah, so you can watch those zones if and when we come back and test, and we'll see if we just get a low time frame consolidation and everybody keeps going, but it wants to keep going from here, which again is going to hinge on whether Bitcoin continues or flips the weekly supply that I talked about earlier. I think the BTC pair on this also wasn't that bad. Hit a weekly demand and has some space to supply. So BNB, I'd be more inclined to think at least you can get some sort of a long out of it, you know, even if it's not a long to, you know, the moon, it could just be a long. It's a long on the BTC pair up to here, and wait for a retracement on it, but or wait for a consolidation through here, but that potentially has some hope. Link. So these ones, yeah, slightly more bullish than the old majors, the new majors. So obviously with this one, we've come through the daily supply and it's coming back down now to test. So some of these, again, I've set an alert for there for weekly demand. Again, conscious of all the trend line stops below, but again, it did hit 3-month demand at the lows there, did take out some stops previously. So again, the difficulty here is that we've had a hit on major demand. We've taken out stops, which is what we want, but we've had this really, really slow and nasty sideways. We're not really seeing a lot of buy interest in there. And that's what's making me reticent about longs. I'm wondering if we're going to take another deeper drop first. And this has, obviously broken out of the range, could hold here, could keep going. But if you're not positioned in longs, I'd just be careful. You could take one of them, perhaps if it's coming in hitting daily demand, BNB, this, something in the hope we're going to get another move up to those levels. Let me have a look at what the BTC pair is doing. yeah, so the BTC pair on this, if it's a monthly supply, I'm not inclined to take. So I think BNB over Link, unless we see a close on this that flips that back in demand, but it's the second, third hit, coming off 6 months supply there. So it's difficult. So the other difficulty is, so what we've had is, I'm saying on a lot of alts, is that we had these bounces last year. They came up into major supply here, and now they've come down and taken out the lows, and now a lot of the wicks took out the lows. So it was a question of whether that was enough, how much of the wick we were going to retrace after having moved up, and or whether, that even counts. Does this just need to go back and test the style of the wick before, even if that's going to hold, having fallen into this 2 month demand down here. Made it very, very hard. So I think I alerted quite a lot of these levels again where they hadn't, in this case if Link had already hit here, but where the wick had gone through, I alerted quite a lot of these levels, but mostly they didn't hold, or only held if the timing was right and they got a little bounce off them. So anyway, yeah, Link BTC, so potentially could be really nice, but for me at this point we are still guessing. It's still, and that has to be a guess at some point, I guess. That's gambling, that's trading, but you're gambling with probabilities. But the difficulty being is, while we're on a demand, we've hit once, we've had a bounce once, we've taken out, we have taken out the low on that wick, but is this going to at least come and take out the low again, or is it going to go deeper? So you just need to watch and see if it gives you any demand. So yes, good bounce on that last candle, which I'm on the weekly. But is it just going to perform a full retrace? I don't know. We can't for one week of move, and in fact only probably a few days for actual up on that, couple of days, maybe 4 days. This could just as easily as retrace the whole thing. I can see some people getting really bullish, but really, we need to see something much more significant like that, taking out local supply. And in this case, it's still a monthly supply, so I just can't really, in good conscience, say we should be looking for longs on this. Which basically is the same as the BTC pair. And what we see on BCH, like I showed before, is that it's just come straight back through the weekly demand. So we can't necessarily go back to that quickly. Can't rely on these weekly demands. Okay, it was probably a weaker weekly demand on BCH maybe than some of the others, and was coming off that monthly, the swing fairly the monthly supply, but it did have a weekly demand in here, and it just is red candling straight back through it. So I just don't know if all the other majors are going to do exactly the same thing. If you show the weekly on this could show this much more significant weekly demand than on BCH, but it could still red candle all the way back through it. Now also a lot of these also have another weekly lower. So previously I had an alert down here as well at like 8.83 for that weekly demand. But when you look at the low time frames, again, we've got that chop and the trend line stops. So I've taken a lot of those out now as well. Anyway, Link, another one you can watch coming back into that demand. So either all of these are going to hold, or they're probably all going to break, and it's just hard to judge which. ADA, I was more short biased because this isn't on a particular zone of interest for longs for me. Had the wick, retraced the full wick, so in contrast to Link, which is still at a higher low, also in this kind of area, ADA did drop, and I think it made a monthly supply up here, so I then went more hard on the shorts back in January to get the shorts into here, and then similarly I was harder on shorts on this, but again it's still doing the same sideways as everything else. But really I want this down lower before I'm confident for longs on it. However, again, like everything else, it's got a weekly demand, so worth watching as and when that hits to see if it holds. And then finally, Dogecoin. Dogecoin being probably the strongest of all the old and new majors. This weekly demand, so this had hit monthly demand down here, but not dissimilar to others, it's hit now 3 times. I think that wick did take out the low, so again, that's in its favour. But the problem is it flipped also the 3-month supply, so it's now just up at this level. Could go higher inside, and my short entries are higher on this. I was really clearing my throat a lot. I've just realised I said I'll go out at 8:15, and it's now coming up to 7:30, and I need to take a shower and everything. I think, again, I had a long on this down here, but I deleted it. because I wasn't particularly confident. Now it's gone up. Like if it had tested early, that's fine, but it didn't come quite test where I wanted it to in here to get the long, so it just ran. And I haven't set, why haven't I set a new weekly? I don't think I set a weekly alert on that because it's slightly offset and has already tapped it. I think I was just a bit too late. Oh, I remember actually, I think I just talked about this on the previous stream. I said this had made a weekly and actually look for it on there. So actually that did perform quite nicely if you watch my previous stream, because I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure on stream, I said, yeah, this has just hit this daily demand in here, so you can look for longs on this. It's got a 2-day demand here. It's got space to supply, so I wouldn't be looking at shorting this yet unless I see something flip. Trend line stops here make me think don't long either though, but that's up to you. At the moment, for this, I haven't got any long entry on it anyway. My next long entry is on 6-month demand down here, but I'll see what develops on this. Okay, that's that. And then the second, a lot of new majors, which I might try and be even quicker on because they are generally of less interest to people. Solana was the only one that hit. So of the previous stream I did, I think I talked about all these weekly demands that I had alerted, and Solana was the only one of those that hit from the previous stream and gave a really nice move. So that was a nice call that I made on the previous stream that actually hit and worked, along with the W one, and then the others just simply didn't hit yet. Similarly here, again, just a sideways range, has hit a weekly at the low. So again, it's hit a zone that we could look for longs in. On the downside, it looks very much like Ether did before it dumped. And I think I compared this before, the Sol BTC pair. I believe I compared to Ether BTC back up here somewhere. I think we had an initial, we had a sort of difference because we had this move up, whereas I think Ether BTC just died. But really, even I think at this point in time, I was saying this is looking distributive. We had that triangle correction, drop down, fuckery taking out the stops, and then this potentially was going to come down like Ether did, and also down potentially to here, because that was sort of similar, the similarities with the Ether BTC chart. So it's obviously this is behind, it's taking its sweet time. Oops. But again, this is not a chart that's making me want to long the US dollar pair. It isn't at a significant low here. Some wicks over there, but this is not an area I would look to long it. I would still want this to go lower. Weekly demand, 2-monthly demand down here before being really happy with looking for longs on Sol. Having said that, obviously there's a Sol BTC pair, so that, if BTC pumps, that doesn't mean Sol can't pump, just pumps less than Bitcoin. So again, weekly demand here, you can watch this for possibility of a long entry, even if it only gets up to there, might give you a little scalp. What else? I don't know if I really want to go through all these because they're just not very interesting. Near hit short entry there. I was a bit early. I was looking for longs to try and get the move up there, and then it just messed around. I said this was a weekly demand, but it was just a bit dubious at the time for the timing. Came down deeper, but then also just pumped and didn't come back and collect my long entry here. So I still have a long entry on that. It does have weekly and 2-weekly demand, but is also a weekly supply. So again, it's got that. The problem with these alts is that with most alts now, a lot of them are in supply like this. They've got very choppy demand below, but the overall structure is that down. So it's my sort of amount of indecision. So we've got a second hit on support here, took out the lows, that's good from a bullish perspective. From a bearish perspective, maybe this is just a retracement for another drop, in a giant triangle channel type scenario. So obviously that means, we could get a bullish move up to here. We do have stops above there. So there are possibilities on this. And I would like to be more bullish on this. But for now, we're in supply. So at least wait until it comes down. Maybe I've been too conservative on this. That was the other thing I was going to say. The difficulty I've had with alts as well is how much they're going to retrace. So, sometimes like this, the first wave here retraced nicely into demand. I just wasn't around then, so I missed it. This wave also came back nicely into demand. But then here we've had a bit of chop, and a lot of the other alts, again, like you can see here, for example, this didn't hit demand. It just kept going. So some alts are doing big retraces, some doing small retraces. So I've been alerting what I can, but on the long side, that's been hard. The other problem is, even when they've been hitting zones that I like at the lows here, in some cases, I think I saw one that had a massive pump, but I think yesterday, was it True or Trust or something? Maybe I'll move on to that now, the Truth. I feel like it's Truth. So this is obviously all the other shitcoins. Yeah, so here, short of 5-day supply in there, back down into 5-day demand, which I had alerted. So very nice. So really, arguably a very great trade if you held from the 19th of February until, well, the end of the pump, maybe 14th of May. So if you held for March, April, May, 3 months through all this, you locked up your capital, that would have been a great trade. But 3 months is, then it's foolish to do that, because obviously in that time, there are any amount of times that Bitcoin could have hit something. And also in the meantime, it created a monthly supply above. So, I looked at shorts here on the 12-hour supply. I think it's 12 or 8-hour supply at the top here. I think it took a wick slightly through. So we've just had a retest short come on that today. I said there were two entries. So this is, like I said earlier, we're looking at what I'm looking at. So the major alert goes for here, the high. Then I'm looking at, where the next demand is. And in this case, there's, I think, some 2-hour and 1 hour in here, but there's just a lot of chop through here. Then I'm looking for, has it made 8 or 12-hour supply? If it's made 8 or 12-hour supply, then I'm alerting the new 8 or 12-hour supply, presuming it hasn't come down and hit some major demand in between. So that's basically what I've been doing. In this case, in some cases, and in this case, we'll have an 8 or 12-hour and then an untested zone above, and those ones, again, are a bit hit and miss. Sometimes they'll reject, sometimes they'll run through and swing fail that zone, particularly if it's not very clean like this, to go to the next zone. Now, these are still aggressive entries. It was still, this is still very clearly in an uptrend and just retracing that last up move, so it can still make a higher high. So these are preemptive shorts, but worth considering, because if it does work, it's got a long way down, it can drop. So that's why I consider these more reliable. If they fail, they fail. Then I've got an alert set at the next zone above to look for similar. And I think, the most of the alerts I've got on here at the moment are the ones that have hit today, so I'm probably not going to be able to demonstrate too many. But yeah, sort of similar here, EWY, whatever this is. This has just been going up. Managed to get a couple of longs in here, and then it's doing what may be a blow off top. Again, could. A lot of these we see, you've seen many of these, I can't think of the names now, but a whole bunch of them, maybe even Truth, which I just showed you a minute ago, that are just throwing giant red candles back through everything. So it is worth looking once you've got 8 or 12-hour or daily supply up here and you do get the retest. They're really, really nice entries. So you can just set those and walk away. Preferably they break the demand first. So you can see this did actually break the daily demand before it came back up to test the alert that I had set previously. I guess that's a 12-hour supply. But yeah, you can just set a blind entry in there and you'll stop above there. Now, if you're in it, you either take a profit for a scalp, or just move your stop to break even and see if you get that big drop. This now long entry is probably highly risky. I think if this, I'm going to delete that. I feel like if this comes down, this is probably going to run through everything now. I'll keep that one there because it's at the breakout, and then there's a monthly below. So that's EWY. So I was watching that for some reason, and EWJ, I just kind of found it interesting. And I was wondering if EWJ would follow EWY. I have no idea if they have any link whatsoever, but, might as well watch. So this obviously has not gone as far as EWY yet. So again, you can watch this as it comes back into here. So this had some longs through here, but then it decided to do a bit of a bigger retrace, tried to flip short, again got a drop, but it's still messing around on sideways, and then got another long entry before the pop. Other than that, hype people like, don't they? Interested in hype. So hype, very long bias as we got down to the lows here, because it hit monthly or 3 monthly demand, in fact, down there. Unfortunately, like so many, we got that final drop before it ran through. So I don't know if anybody took the higher time frame entries, then that would have been fine. But if they took sort of higher low entries through here, then they probably would have been stopped out, unfortunately, before that. Then some shorts in there, back into long. So again, just a mix of alerts, and this is what indicative of what I'm doing across most alts, just a mix of alerts. Let me just check what that text message was. My friend who I was supposed to be going out with. Tell her I'm still streaming, so don't rush. Anyway, yeah, so this has just been chopping around up here. Our high time frame bias coming off 3 month demand is that we go and take out that high. However, it's starting to look a bit corrective and is coming up into supply. So it's given some quite nice entries. So again, yeah, long into short. This short only gave a bit of a scalp before it went up again. And then I think again, came back down. I would have re-alerted this weekly if I'd been on the ball on that. A little bit harder now because it's come up into 2 weeks supply. But again, just need to see a bit more of what develops on this. It's a little bit more choppy. But so the ones with higher volume are a little bit more choppy, like these, a little like this. Sorry, not like these. And the ones with lower volume are the ones we're seeing with these crazy big pump candles, which then fully retrace. And maybe I should show you some of those. It's probably better than them. So anyway, these other ones are the ones that I've hit. So I think Riff's done a big pump. So and I just missed that, but you can have a watch of Riff because it's just rejected off the 12-hour supply in there. So you can watch for see if this gets a decent sized drop on it. That's also a nice example. You can see again where I did this lower down. So again, it hit monthly supply in here, got a retest entry. I think that was an 8 hour or something in there, but didn't break down 5-day demand. So again, it gives you a nice scalp down there, but you don't have to hold it. Could have given more. So you need to work out how you're going to trade these off these 12 hours, 8 or 12 hour supplies. And it just depends a lot on what is below and what this is. So in the case of Riff, maybe you would have held that and possibly ended up stopped out because this is an annual supply. But you have to look, so in order to better judge, you have to look at the bigger picture and what things are doing in the bigger picture, where they're coming from, what they're going to, what they've done. Has this broken down, like all-time low? Do you think this is going to break down? I'm not going to do all that analysis now, but that's what you need to judge on these to know whether to hold them. But as I say, for me, again, the most reliable trade at the moment is hitting a major supply like this and then watching for 8 or 12 hour supply to be made inside that zone and then just short there, stop above the high, and what will be will be. So you can continue looking at Riff for that. Collect another example, hasn't done anything yet. So, and an example of something you should leave alone for the moment. So we're in a big monthly supply. We're hitting a large 5-day inside it, which I've had alerted. And so far, the 12-hour chart, it's come down, it's hit 12-hour demand, but it hasn't made a 12-hour supply. It's got demand, still got choppy daily, and then it's made a 12-hour. You don't have all these drawn, made a 12-hour. So this, for me, is not ready for a short yet. It's not giving you the signs that you want to look for a short, but it's something I'll keep on the radar in case it does later. CFX, similar, that we hit at the same time as Collect, I think, yesterday. This has had a decent drop straight off there. And, it's up to you. I'm suggesting the 8 and 12 hour because I think they're most reliable, and generally I also don't look lower time frame than that when I'm setting alerts. Maybe this gives you a 10-minute, a 15-minute, an hourly entry up here. But what I do when the alert hits is I go and draw the rest of the zones, because in most cases, these are old alerts that I put in. This is a 3-month level, definitely worth watching for shorts. Can go much higher inside it if it wants to. I don't even know if I've got all the zones drawn in. There might be 3 days, 5 days. Yeah, there's a whole lot of chop in 3 days and 5 day supplies and things like that through there. For all that 3-day. So that's the sort of true supply on this. Oops. So yeah, I've only very quickly updated this. It's hit a 3-month level, so it's worth watching for shorts. And then just pick how you want to do that. If you want to do that on the higher time frame. So yeah, the problem with crypto is if you look too high time frames, if you kind of go, I want to see a daily 3-day flip or a daily flip even, it might have just dropped before you even get the opportunity to enter, which is why I like the 8 and 12 hour. particularly if it's hit a zone like this, a zone inside a zone. It's the top of the last drop. Because again, you can take that if you want with your stop here. And I haven't really assessed the reliability of those, because mostly like my strategy is generally hits very high time frame. Look at what the structure is in the chop around there. If it hits a semi-high time frame, so a daily, a 3-day, or a weekly or something inside a monthly, then that's very reliable. And then I look for the 8 or 12 hour change. So in this case, it's already dropped. It may not give you the 8 or 12 hour. That's the other option. But just watch what develops. Maybe there's a 4 hour in here. Sometimes I go down to the lower time frames. If there's something else in here, there isn't much here, but if there's something else in here, you can start looking for shorts again once it gets back up into this area. But this again, you have to note it's still very much in an upward structure at this point. It's come back down into demand, so this is more of a risky short still. And then we've had a few today that obviously hit demand. So IN, Nauris, Aria, and Wet have all hit quite demand. So you can have a look at all those on BMX. I think BMX and Buller. It's Buller gone. Buller's up there. Yeah, the Buller actually hasn't quite hit, but you can see all the ones that have hit demands today with the market drop. And then esports is another one that I was looking at for possible breakout trade. So then another one of the sort of options, I guess, we've got in different structures that we're looking at is we've got some that have just broken out or that might be breakouts. So esports we've been watching for a really long time. Became difficult through here. I left it a while, didn't come back down to where I would have wanted to long from. Nice short in there, but picked up 5-day demand and then just pumped from there. So now it's got 8 and 12 hour demand here. So I've set an alert there. Again, if it comes back here, these are risky. So I don't necessarily think these are the highest probabilities. I wouldn't say limit order in here, but again, watch the retest on this. But I generally think they're 50-50 as to whether they're going to continue the breakout or whether they're just going to throw that giant red candle through everything. So just be a little bit careful on these ones. As I say, those shorts are better. I think if you're looking for higher probability trades. PIAC again, another example. I haven't updated the demand on this yet, but hit 2-week supply alert yesterday. Just see what the reaction is. So the difficulty now is this has obviously taken some time to come back and test this. A lot of the alerts that I've set, I'm probably part of the problem. Like if I was to look in detail and really think hard about these, is that if this had come back here and tested it quickly, it probably would have got a better continuation. But now they've made the demand and had the consolidation in the middle. This is the kind of reverse of this at the high. So as that at the high, this is even longer at the low. Is this just a bigger reversal to now just go back up again? And you can see there's so many zones not tested. I don't think this is going to happen. Like in my crypto experience, we might get decent moves off these consolidations that we've had at the lows. But remember the bigger picture: monthly supply, drop, retest monthly supply, drop, retest monthly supply. So any of these that I see come back into these areas where they're kind of more clean like this, yes, that's a decent move. Yes, it's absolutely a tradable move. But that would be, when I start seeing a lot of these happening, a lot of these coming up and testing these areas, that's when I'll be looking for shorts across the market. See. But yeah, and certainly in situations like this, you can see there was a weekly supply here and it got tested 3, 4, 5 times. There's no reason once it's consolidated, once it's tested that many times, you can't trade these last moves. It's got a new weekly demand down here that hasn't been tested, in fact 2 weekly. There's no reason you can't look at this 2 weekly demand on a retest, but know again that you're still counter trend and that this is just a retracement of that last down move. So while we've got 2 weekly demand here, we might make a weekly if we hold for long enough up here for the next couple of days. But this is still potentially a continuation of a downtrend. And this was the problem I had with a lot of the longs I've had set from earlier this year, So I have to go back and look at previous charts, but similar to this over here, that I was like looking for all the shorts at the top and did great. And I say it's a problem. It's not really like I told the group that this was the situation, but that when things came back down and tested here, I was like, we are still in bearish moves, so there is no reason these new demands are going to hold. And this is basically exactly the same. That we're there. We come back down and test here, there is no reason that that's going to hold. So you just have to look for what reaction we get here, whilst knowing that the bigger picture is still a downtrend. And then if you hit any significant supply on like this on a first test, there is a very high likelihood of the probabilities that this is going to happen over this or this. So my bias remains down, but just looking for the possibility of longs on retests. Right, so anything else? We'll just run through a few of these. So these are the May alerts of all the things that have hit in the last couple of weeks. H, like the first one to start with, actually is a bit of an outlier. So this I hadn't looked at for ages, unfortunately. So we were looking at this a lot back at the end of last year, because obviously it had these big moves previously, and then it came back down. It was in this 6-month demand, and it came and hit this weekly, and then the 3-day inside it gave a really nice move. And then I didn't look at it for ages. And this is just one of the situations where it's had a lot of supply, but it's been maybe less clear. So let's look at the difference. So here I would have had an alert probably for the weekly or a 5-day or something. Again, it's given a reaction, but just hasn't got very far. And then what I do is I move the alert up, so we get the reaction. It's come back down into demand, move up the alert to the next, I think probably a 12-hour supply in there. Happen to have made a daily demand right underneath it, so it's just dropped back down into there and moved again. Again, it's hit a daily supply up here, again, small reaction. But the bigger picture is more bullish. It's in this one of the few charts that is more bullish, with this larger 6-month demand, and then this possibility of consolidation before going up and maybe taking out the highs again. But in this case, I think probably already could have put another long entry on this. I haven't looked at it properly. I just brought it up yesterday, actually, to have a quick look through the list. How are we going on time? 1 hour and 20. Probably need to finish up soon. I'll finish up in the next 10 minutes anyway. Yeah, so anyway, slightly different structure on that one. Finally, something slightly more bullish, but really not much looking like that. Owl, another one of the newer ones, and still just very bearish. Again, hasn't quite hit this alert, but it would have been, as I just explained for PIAC, exactly the same kind of scenario, that we've got this downtrend, looks kind of going into more of a sideways move. It's come back, it happens to have a new demand. Did get a nice reaction off there, but hasn't made it through supply, so it's now just still remaining sideways. So again, if you want to take longs, you can take these as scalps, but I would mostly say don't hold them unless you're happy to hold them for indefinite periods of time. I would also say, like I think I said, this was a high risk one when the alert hit as well, because there is no demand to the left. Like preferably you want things that have actually hit some sort of big demand here, like we saw on H, for example. Orca. It's another short, so this is, in this case, hasn't come back up, so I think I set the alert there. This has hit a 6-month supply. Set an alert for daily supply there, but it's come down, hasn't gone back up to test. In this case, again, has hit a major monthly demand in here, so could look for long entries on this 2-week here, with the challenge being that we've hit a 6-month supply. So again, if you look at the very high time frame tends to win. So 6-month supply, so I expect this to take out that low. Whether it's going to give bounces in the meantime, hard to say. But I'm trying to set the ones that I consider, I set alerts for the ones I consider more probabilistic. This I don't mind, actually, so I think maybe I can move that alert up there just to see. This is the possible one. Make that. We'll see what happens when that hits there. The macro picture on this is just sideways and consolidating, so it's not necessarily a strong 6-month supply. So we can see what happens on that one if it gets back there. Giggle's another one, hit a dubious monthly demand because it's from the opening candle up there. I think my alert went. So it's testing a weekly demand here now, so again, could be a long. I think my alert, I know my alert here did go for the 2-week demand, and then I moved it down so in case it comes deeper onto the 2-day in there. But obviously it's slightly front run that, so again, watch this level as it comes back into 28. It's got the daily below. That's another chart that's looking slightly better than some of the others. Significant downtrend, but at least has had a significant up move, taking out some of that supply, the local supply, and a gap to major supply above. So really, yeah, probably the other key point is that it's the new coins. The new coins are the ones that are performing because they are the ones they have less supply. And this was exactly the same as the last alt season. That wasn't really an alt season, but the last like significant up move you see on the others chart, it was similar to what I was saying then. Like all the older coins that you see just retraced into monthly supply, 3-monthly supply, and then this year have had continued drop and made lower lows. And it was the ones that was performing last year. Obviously, it's the narrative coins and the new coins, but it's the coins that don't have supply. It's the coins that don't have a whole bunch of people waiting to get out above. So, you know, once they get, I think Play obviously had previous PA on this from either the C chart, either it's been deleted off here, or I've put it on from the Gate chart or something like that. But again, you can see why I always do this, because you can see the reliability of this arbitrary line that I've got there. But yeah, it's the one, so you can see this just ran straight back up through here. I didn't have any short entries there. Been more short bias through here, a little bit harder to get into again, but based on that swing failure. And then I've got a long entry on monthly demand here if it comes back. Yeah, some monthly or 2-monthly demand in there. But these are the coins that really you want to be looking for longs on. Not things which are too brand new, but things that probably are listed on Binance and listed on multiple exchanges, not just Nextly, like genuine shitcoin listings that probably could disappear at any time. But look at the ones that are listed across all exchanges but don't have much history. Similar with Vici here. Obviously, this hasn't got too much history, but it does have a 3-month supply. Comes straight up into the weekly. Made a 3-day supply. So some of these I've got higher time frame. This may or may not have given, let's say if this gives a 12-hour, yeah. So made a 12-hour supply here, retested it, dropped. A little bit of a wick through there. So that's what I said to watch out for, that sometimes you can get wicks through the 12-hour. And there may have been, maybe it was similar to one of the ones I showed a minute ago. Yeah, so there's a 4-hour just above there. Looks like it just tapped into that 4-hour on that wick. So it wicked through the 12-hour into the 4-hour and then dropped. But obviously I didn't look at this soon enough to get the re-entry on that. Put a re-entry for the 3-day, but it hasn't tested. Now something like this, you're really just guessing. This may or may, it's got a 3-month supply, so that would make me quite wary. It's probably based on the first candle, so it's not the best 3-month supply, but it's something you should watch out for. So check all your charts, like just make sure you don't trade. This is exactly the same as the problem we had when we had the bounce from previously, like I said, is that I watched so many influencers like calling coins like on like this type of thing for a breakout. And I'm like, well, yeah, possible, but it's just hit 3-month or monthly supply. So make sure while a lot of people say, oh, you're too high for high time frame, I'm only trading on the 4-hour. Yeah, that's fine. But always have those lines on your chart, because even if you're trading on the 4-hour, my mouse has gone again. I'll go back quickly, that's good. Even if you're trading on the 4-hour or the daily or whatever, you need to know where those zones are, high time frames. Know that that's a 3-month level, even if you don't want to trade it. Know that you've got your 2-week levels. You can see how neatly that came off the 2-week in there. M was another one of the more stronger ones. And look for shorts as it was coming into testing this high, because it had swing failure there, but it had a lot of consolidation, so it just ran through. Managed to get a couple of longs off there, but it's kind of lost steam, obviously, from here. Made a new 2-monthly demand there, so I've got an alert there, and then it's got a monthly much deeper inside. So that's kind of a nice retest of the breakout zone that broke out. But it has kind of made a lower though. Yeah, like I say, it's lost momentum here, so it could either pick it up again, or this could end up as a distribution. Again, hasn't gone back enough to test my short. Freedom of money. Yeah, this was one, I think back here, I was like hoping we'd get a breakout on this. I think I had a weekly demand in here, but then it's come back and it's flipped that to weekly supply. So I had the alert for weekly supply in there. It's run higher in there, but not quite to the top. just thinking about it. This could be a very interesting chart. Unfortunately, hasn't hit my long entry at the low either. Could be a very interesting chart, but just needs some more time because this, I mean, it could be interesting in both directions. Either it's going to go to zero or it could seriously pump. But I need to see something a bit more on this. At the moment, it looks like the go to zero is winning. It's in 2 week supply. So if this creates another 2 week supply here, if it drops and creates another 2 week supply, actually I think it's the end of next week, then that might be an interesting short. And this also is a potentially interesting short if it comes back into there. So I might just bring that alert down. What do you think? A retest here could be interesting to watch as well. So yeah, watch if it comes back into test here. Be conscious there's a zone up there that hasn't been tested, and this is still early days. And still, I would still potentially, the long here is decent. Maybe we get a drop down, or maybe this rejects here, comes a drop down into here, and then runs. Or maybe we get the drop down first, and then a test for the bigger short. Need to see what order things hit in. EWJ we already looked at. Mouse is, I think, fading out rapidly. So maybe I should just end there since there's nobody around anyway. Before the mouse dies. Oops. 40, another nice example. So again, shorts through here. I don't know whether maybe that hit, maybe that didn't on the lower time frames. I've got a feeling, yeah. So I think the alert went for that, but it was slightly front run for the re-entry. So I did do a re-entry here on the 2 hour. And then a re-entry on the 12 hours. So again, it's a nice illustration. And these are the ones you want as well. These are these ones with the big pumps. So I think the one you like, we looked at collect before. Let's go back to that. So we looked at collect. So the difference here is that this is the same 12-hour chart, but it's got daily demand, 12-hour demand, more dailies in there, made a big weekly, longer consolidation. In contrast, we've got Audi, which pumped in like 2 days, 3 days, no, actually 2 days, and therefore has only hourly support, very little support all the way back down. Yes, I've got these levels drawn in. It's trying to pick up this old 3 week supply here. But obviously when it goes up that quickly, it's got much less support. So those are the ones, again, that are much higher probability and better for you to look at. And I should reset this as well. So this, I think I had 8 or 12 hour supply in there. So this could still come back for that 12 hour, particularly if it holds the demand it's at now. But these, again, higher probability than the ones that have consolidated for extended periods of time. So obviously, yeah, much less support on this, much more likely to just die. And I think that's what I wanted to show with some of these, because some are just running back through everything. Lab's another one to look for the big short on, not coming back from my long entries. I think, we talked about it in the group around here, and I was saying like it might drop down here. I said I had the long alert there, but it was more looking for a short, but it happened really quickly. Again, gave a short entry there, I think on whatever that was retesting, 2 hour or 1 hour or something in there, but it didn't get very far and has now run further again. But again, at some stage, this is going to throw a giant red candle through there. This one's interesting though, like it tried, but it did hold support. Baby, another one, clean pump into there, didn't give any retest, didn't have one, and it didn't give one. It's trying to pick up that 6 month level of support. So again, worth having these levels drawn in. I think I had that again drawn in from either another chart or previous history on MEXC, because the history has clearly now disappeared. It's hard to know with the history when they disappear, like if they've disappeared forever. My gosh, it was 8 o'clock. How did that happen? I need to shower. Yeah, it's hard to know with the history if they disappear forever, whether it means it's invalid or whether it is a data error, or I don't know. Like I say, from when I've left history in there and the price has disappeared, I tend to find some quite often the levels are still respected. So I wonder if they are valid. Yeah, so I was going to say if they're invalid, maybe if it's from another baby. So I think, for example, if somebody previously had the ticker baby, and then there's a new baby, and it's the old baby's gone, and then there's a new baby under the same ticker. Or I think sometimes they have the history and then it gets deleted later. That's what I'm guessing. But yeah, so I won't necessarily trade these levels that it has from, historically, but I think they're worth watching if price does get back there. Yeah. So anyway, that's another one with a decent pump that's just come straight back down again. So anything that's pumped really quickly is certainly worth watching. Zama is similar to a lot of the other, how the majors are looking. Again, nice trades in both directions. The only thing else I haven't covered actually is CHZ. So remember I did do a stream earlier this year on the football coins. I was too early. But the reason I did it, and I did it that early, was because CHZ had made this big 2 monthly demand. And I think one of the other ones, Lazio, I think also had. Unfortunately, Lazio subsequently got delisted, so that died anyway. Or delisted from futures, it might still be in spot. And then the other couple I had, City and Bar, were just dying anyway. Now, Bar I know has pumped in the last few days because I've got that somewhere on this list. But I think I did try for a retest long, but I think it just went straight back through it. But CHZ actually has been holding okay. So each time you can see I'm a little bit too aggressive. So here gave a scalp, but yeah, didn't make a higher, and then it came back down deeper. Here didn't do much off that level. I tried to hold, but then failed and came back down deeper. So I'm getting some nice longs on this, and even here, I think it made a new 2 month demand. So I alerted the top. It said we could come deeper. And we might find the same. But yeah, so still keep an eye on this because we do still have the World Cup this summer. It does have these monthly demands. It did hit 3 monthly demand with this wick at the low. So I still think this has hope, but it's also like the rest of the market looking very, very corrective. But it had that nice pump there. I'm not sure where that came from at the start of the year. I think everything else was dying and this was one of the few that went up, but keep it on the radar anyway. Let me just go back to Bar. Some tumble down the bottom because it's alerted more recently. Yeah, so again, this had another decent up move, but monthly supply straight back into 3 day inside monthly supply, and then I set an alert because it had taken out the lows and just coming back through. So unfortunately, Bar's not doing much. I don't know, maybe Bar did it win something last week? Got a feeling it did actually. My boyfriend follows them. Anyway, it is now 8:02. This is an hour and a half stream, so it is time for me to sign out. I hope that is useful. A little bit on Bitcoin at the beginning, and then from minute 25, we went into all the alts, starting with all the new majors and then some random alts here. Yeah, I think there's not much more I can say at this point. Alts. Highest probability trades are not going to be trying to find the ones that break out. You can chase some of these up, like Iris here, like UBE here and Iris, for example. There are things you can chase up, but you just wait for the retraces and just watch the retraces to see if they hold, because a lot of them are dying. A lot of them are not necessarily holding the most aggressive entry. They're coming back to the middle. And yeah, wait and see what Bitcoin does. I can see it's looking like it wants to stop rallying now and coming back down again. So it's going to be interesting to see where that ends up by the end of the weekend. Bitcoin, the biggest thing is where's the weekly going to close? Is it going to create a weekly supply? So be very conscious of that, and be very conscious of the fact it's now the 3 month supply at the high. Hi C-Train joining right at the end. Anyway, yeah, that's it for the day. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I will try and stream again next week, and I'll try and get more consistent about this. Have a good weekend. Bye.